Everybody wants a solution, but nobody wants to delve into the problem and see what is the nature of the problem that we have.
The source of your power in life is your attitude towards the world. And in human nature, it's your lens, it's your way of looking at the world.
I've reset my expectations, and I have a lot of moments where I'm, for no reason at all, unhappy. But if I have some moments that are not like that, I'm like, party! Like, this is great.
It all starts with who you are, because you'll never rise any higher than what's going on within you.
The problem with humanity is just this, that for every other creature, nature has drawn two lines. Within these two lines, they live and die. So their idea of full-fledged is hitting the ceiling of their life. But if a human being hits a ceiling, he gets frustrated and miserable because nature, this process of evolution has delivered to us to a place where there is only the bottom line, there is no top line, though some human beings are trying to breach the bottom line and go below that effort also is going on So essentially, what human life is when life was in the other forms of life that you see on the planet, nature determined a certain compulsive, instinctive ways of functioning. Once you become human, these lines have been removed. You can act consciously. That means what you call as human potential is not of any kind of measurable limit. It can go as far as you desire or as far as you have the courage to walk. So when we say human potential, unleashing human potential, it is not about reaching the peak, it is a trajectory. Because what our life is a combination of a certain amount of time and energy. Time is rolling away for all of us at the same pace. If you sit, it rolls away, if you sleep, it rolls away, if you do something, it goes away, if you don't do anything, it goes away. You're happy or miserable, it goes away. Time is running out for all of us. So it's only the energy that you can do different things with. If you bring your energies to a certain level of intensity and possibility, what somebody does in 10 years, you may do it in 1 year. This means if you live here for 100 years, it feels like in people's impact that you have created, it feels like you lived here for 1,000 years, simply because you have managed your life energies in a certain way. So for me, a human being impactful means, how conscious have you become? This is very important. Because if you're in compulsive cycles, then your energy gets wasted in so many things. If you observe people in a day, let's take 24 hours, in that anyway most people by prescription in America they sleep for 8 hours So 8 hours means 1/3 of life is gone. In the remaining 2/3 they have to eat, they have to, shower, bathroom, this, that, all this, another 2-3 hours gone. So literally 50% of life is gone, daily basis, just for basic maintenance of this life. 50% of the time is gone in maintenance, remaining 50%, what they have, if you look at every single move that they may make with their body, their thought process, their emotions, you will see a whole lot of it is happening in compulsive cycles. Or in other words, if you are little sensitive to life, you will realize you are the biggest issue in your life. So this is one thing that I'm trying to do with people, that you are never the issue in your life. I'm not the issue. My thought, my emotion, my body is never the issue. My thought, my emotion, my energy and my body are my instruments of function. They are not impediments in my life. But I would say for 90% of the human beings, their own body, then the compulsions of the body, the compulsions of their thought, the compulsions of their emotions are ruling them most of the time. So when you yourself are a problem, well, you're on self-help.
How have you, so rats will die if you breed them to produce no dopamine.
Yeah.
You can put food 8 inches from their face and they'll starve to death.
Yes.
Which is crazy.
Yeah.
So how are you, I mean, writing a book is brutally difficult.
Right. So it's not that I want to be a rat without any dopamine, and I couldn't even if I wanted to. But when I notice myself striving, that's the moment where I go, nope, don't do that anymore.
How'd you finish the book?
Oh, well, the writing was pure joy for me. Not.
Would you have done it if it had stopped being fun? Halfway through, it stops being fun. It's now hard.
There are times when it's not fun. I mean, there are times when it's not fun. What I'm trying to say is, if no one had ever read it, I would have enjoyed writing it anyway. It was really
You
pure
and I
process.
are the same on that. Truly. But it's interesting that you think of it as not striving.
Right. My frame, or like my sort of, the way that I think about it is opposite to the way that you think about it. But it sounds like we've gotten to the same place thinking
That's
opposite.
what's utterly interesting. And so that's why I think that this is really about neurochemical management. So you and I are trying to get to the same state of what I'll call fulfillment.
Yeah.
So it's oftentimes doing hard things, but with meaning and purpose behind it.
Right.
And so you're doing these hard things, which you talk about this very eloquently in the book, about that registers on the pain side, right? So you've got all these gremlins, which we didn't even talk about this. So if you overindulge on the pleasure, you get this rebalancing to the pain.
Right.
But if you do hard, effortful things, you rebound on the pleasure side.
And it's purely physiologic. That's right.
And so I think you and I have done the same thing, which is realize, if I do this really hard stuff, which kind of registers on the pain side, but there's meaning and purpose behind it, then I will feel amazing.
Yes. Or at least not feel awful. And again, that's also where I think I've reset my expectations to, if I'm not miserable in this moment, and I have a lot of moments where I'm, for no reason at all, unhappy, which I just take as part of the human condition. But if I have some moments that are not like that, I'm like, party, like this is great.
You have to tell your brain what you want because it's always listening. And if you don't know what you want, and I ask all of my patients, what do you want? They'll talk about money, or they'll, like I have a 17, almost 18-year-old daughter, and she's had 2 boyfriends, and I've dismissed them both. But it's like, what do you want? And they talk about money. And I'm like, no, that's a side effect of a meaningful, purposeful life. Having that as the goal is a terrible goal. And I like money. I always say to my team, no margin, no mission, right? You have to make money. But if that's the point, that's the prescription for unhappiness. And I've always, and I got this when I was a medical student, it's people get burned out when they become unbalanced. And so when I ask my patients what they want, relationships, work, money, it's important, but it can't be the thing.
Right.
Physical, emotional, spiritual health. What do you want in a balanced way? Because if you know, then you're more likely to get it. So, for example, you've met Tana. I want a kind, caring, loving, supportive, passionate relationship with my wife. I always want that, but I don't always feel like that. But when I'm thoughtful, when I know my goals, because they're posted, I'm so much more likely to act like that, which means I'm going to have a great marriage. Especially if she has clear goals too, and we have similar goals for our relationship.
Do you guys talk about your goals?
All the time.
And when you say they're posted, where are they posted?
So I have them posted in my bathroom, and I have them on my phone.
Very smart.
And so everything, it comes out. I love like 3-word sentences or 3-word questions. And like for the ands, is it true? And for goals, does it fit? Does my behavior today fit the goals I have for my life.
See, people have divided the universe. This is important, this is not important. This person is important for me, this person is not important for me. This is important for me, that's not important for me. You divided the universe. You will never know anything this way. Indiscriminate focus, indiscriminate attention. I am not attending to you because you are somebody with a cobra in your heart, all right? It doesn't matter who I speak to, who I am with, I'm the same way. Indiscriminate. Only when your attention and involvement is indiscriminate does the universe open up to you. You have discriminated, naturally you close. You know, people come to me and say, Sadhguru, I want to walk the spiritual path. I say, okay, be here for 3 days, let's see what we can do. So, no Sadhguru, day after tomorrow, my uncle's daughter's birthday, I have to go. Oh, you want to get enlightened? And day after tomorrow, uncle's daughter's birthday also, all right. We got 1.5 days. You do one thing, you do this, this and this. I said, Sadhguru, but I don't like this. All right, I'll give them a small piece of paper and say, okay, write down things that you like, we'll only do that. You won't believe it, in this entire universe, most people like only 3 or 4 things. Wow. When you're so constipated in your head that you like only 3 or 4 people or 3 or 4 things in your life, how do you want to open up to the existence? Because life is happening because of its openness. This is a fundamental difference between death and life is, people are thinking it's just breath, all right, on one level. That is also openness. Whether you allow this to happen or you don't allow it to happen, whether you did it consciously or unconsciously, but it's happening, isn't it? Openness is on every subatomic particle, is in communication with everything. That's why this is going on. Breath is happening, so much is happening in connection with everything. It is only in openness you're alive. As you close doors, you're dying in installments. Dying in installments is torture.
You're never gonna make history dominate your domain and handcraft a world-class life if you've got a great psychology, but you're carrying the pain and sadness, disappointment and trauma of the past. So I worked on my heart set, but that's only the second interior empire. The third interior empire, your health set. Don't die. If you want to change the world, like dead people don't change the world. So health set, biohacking. There's a whole chapter on recovery and the essentialness of sleep. So really getting your health set right, but there's a fourth interior empire that I worked on that allowed me to go out in the world and pursue my magic. And it's a little dangerous for me to share because I know how many business people, follow you and how many entrepreneurs, but I'm gonna share it because it's my truth. So it's not just mindset, and it's not just heart set, and it's not just health set, it's soul set. And soul set has nothing to do with religion. Soul set is about working on your character. So you re-access your nobility and your bravery and your authenticity and your decency. And you find a cause that's larger than your life. So when you go out in the world every single morning, people might ridicule you because every genius is ridiculed before they're revered. People might throw stones at you, but you use them to build monuments of mastery. People might not understand you because any disruptor is going to be misunderstood. And even if you're an army of one, a Galileo or a Steve Jobs or a Phil Knight, you continue at all costs. So those 4 interior empires that I go into detail in the book give you a fiery inner core of warriorship and leadership that allow you to go out in the world and do amazing things. But it all starts with who you are because you'll never rise any higher than what's going on within you.
I use affirmations a lot too. That's one of the miracle morning practices is affirmations. And affirmations I think have a kind of a bad rap, like Stuart Smalley, I'm good enough, I'm smart enough, and people like me. And then they're taught by like a lot of self-help pioneers is like, lie to yourself. If you want to be a millionaire, just say, I am a millionaire over and over and over until you believe it, right? But if we know the truth, you're like, I am a millionaire, your brain's like, dude, no, you're not, right? You're like, shut up, I'm doing my affirmations, right? So anyway, the point is, the way that I view affirmations is they simply direct your focus on wherever you want your focus directed. So you can literally, like a computer program, you can go, okay, what are the beliefs that I want to focus on so they expand inside of me? Even the thoughts that I want to focus on. What are my values? What are the behaviors that I need to embody, right? So you read these affirmations every day and you're programming yourself to live in alignment with that program that you've designed, right? So I had my anti-cancer affirmations, which I still have. I use those to manage my mindset, right? So if I have a fear, I will look at what's the opposite of the fear. What's possible? So I could die, yes. Does focusing on that I might die and dwelling on that, and right, and thinking about that and going down that rabbit hole. And most people live with their fear. That's where their focus is. So they're consumed by fear, right? For me, I go, oh yeah, this could happen. And that's not what I want to happen. So I'm going to accept it, make peace with it, and then I'm going to put all of my energy into what I want. And affirmations to me are the best way to do that, because if we leave our brain up to whatever it's up to, dude, it's like, you know, it's like a pinball bouncing around. It's like negative thought, positive thought, negative thought, negative, right? And so we can't trust our brain, you know, until we've conditioned it, right?
The first thing was truly getting to a place of acceptance. Right? Like I was in denial that this was even happening. It felt like I was in the upside down, that like the Matrix is a thing now. Like, is this the simulation? I've, in some ways at the beginning, convinced myself that there was the possibility that this wasn't even real.
Really?
Oh yeah, because it didn't make sense. And then I got to a place of, no, this is real. You have the responsibility to parent these 4 kids. You have the responsibility to show up for your life. How are you going to do it? And the question I started asking was, what did I need to just become the version of who I'd hoped to be 90 days from now? Right? Like the first thing I had to do was really shrink the window of my forward-looking vision casting, where I'd been a person doing 5 and 10 years. Here's where I'm going to be, and I could just, like a movie playing in my head, describe what it was going to look like. I needed to understand, what did I need to do today to get myself just 90 days into the future. And for me, it ended up going through the question of health. How might I, in the 5 dimensions that I've identified as being important for me in health, mental, emotional, spiritual, relational, and physical health, how might I have 2 or 3 things for each of those dimensions of health every day that might become part of my routine and part of what ends up being my set of habits that will allow me to create just enough inertia from this now standing still. I describe a sailboat in the book that is waiting for wind, right? Like, okay, I got to at least build the sail. I got to put it up so that when the wind starts to come, I'm actually prepared to move forward. And so for me, it was, all right, what do I need in my mental health? Well, I needed to see professional freaking help on the regular. I mean, I was talking to a therapist a couple times a week because I didn't understand why I was thinking what I was thinking, why I was feeling what I was feeling, and that interaction created a little bit of inertia.
You didn't understand it, or it was erratic? 1 minute, I can make it, the next minute, no, I'm never going to.
Both. I didn't understand the way that the voice in my head was being so critical of not having had this thing that was so important work out. I'm just an achiever by nature. I've had success in career. I've had success in a whole host of things. And yet I couldn't at the time see that my marriage not working out wasn't a success. My marriage was a success. It just was the end of my marriage in what had been, or the end of our relationship in what had been, as we've now transitioned into something new. But at the beginning, I saw it as a failure, that I somehow had failed. And I was really, as I'm sitting with my therapist or having a conversation through podcasts or books with myself, trying to understand, what could you have done differently, or what are you meant to learn from this? And some of that work, would allow me just a little breadcrumb. Now I'm taking one step closer to an answer that over what now is almost 2 years worth of time had me really come to appreciate I am who I have become, not in spite of what happened, but because of what happened. And that as much as I had this bold declaration at the end of 2019, 2020 is gonna be my best year ever. I have like publicly declared that 45 was the year of my life, that I was waiting for this best year to happen. And what I couldn't appreciate then, that I see so clearly now, is that I was not ever going to be the person who could dictate the conditions that would bring my best forward. Right? And so, yeah, if in some ways I brought on some of what ends up happening in 2020, I apologize for the pandemic and anything else I may have been responsible for. I don't think that for real. But I also, right, like I prayed that certain things that happened would never have happened, and I was doing so at the expense of how that cause and effect relationship produced the best. I wouldn't have been brought to my knees in a way that brought me closer to my spiritual walk. I wouldn't have had the way that this divorce created closeness with my kids, the kind of relationship that comes out of it. I wouldn't have spent the kind of time in physical transformation, really.
Which your physical transformation is crazy.
Well,
crazy.
No, thank you. But like it is, you know, moving my body and pushing myself to do things physically has been an exercise in showing myself that I can do things that go beyond what I believed myself to be capable of, so that I could take that experience in the physical realm and believe it in the mental and emotional realm. Oh, you can also handle things mentally, or you can handle things emotionally that go wildly beyond what you believed yourself to be capable of, because you now have proof, you have evidence in this other part of your life.
Dude, body transformation is the most underutilized mental transformation tool ever. And the number of people that I've seen, whether it's in business, whether it's, you know, in something like a divorce or your career or whatever, where when you show yourself that you can set an intention, go and lift a progressively heavier weight, and your body actually changes, you look different, you feel different, and you can actually pick up heavier things, like that, there's something that goes on of like, oh, what if the same thing is happening in my mind? You can't see it in such a tangible way. But when you go through a physical transformation like that, it really does leave you with something truly profound.
Whenever you feel sad or mad or nervous or out of control, write out what you're thinking. And then it's 5 questions, but it's, is it true? Is it absolutely true? With 100% certainty. Right. And that's the one that usually cracks it. Like, worthless. Is it absolutely true? Now you're getting thoughtful. It's like, well, I'm a mother, and I'm a sister, and I'm a daughter. And no, it's not absolutely true. It's ridiculous. The third question is, how do I feel when I believe I'm worthless, dead, withering, sad, lonely? And the fourth question is, who would I be without the thought, or how would I feel if I didn't have the thought? The most common answer to that one is free. And then you flip it around to the opposite. It's like, I am worth something, or I have worth. And then give me an example, or 2, or 3, or 4. And you have to do that exercise at least 100 times to begin to retrain your automatic response. I mean, I've been teaching people to kill ants for a long time, automatic negative thoughts, but I just found these 5 questions, they're just so elegant to just have a dialogue with yourself. I'll never be successful, or I won't have enough money, or my life has no meaning. It's like, well, let's put that under a microscope. Not positive thinking, accurate thinking.
All human experience has a chemical basis to it. Right now, let us say you're joyful. If you look at your chemistry, it'll be in a certain way. Let's say you're miserable. If you check your chemistry, it'll be a completely different way. Now we have a technology that with which you create a chemistry of blissfulness. So my chemistry is blissful, doesn't matter what's happening. The drama around me is happening in so many different ways, but this is a privilege that I've kept for myself. Me being joyful or miserable, me being peaceful or disturbed, These privileges I have not given it to anybody else, I kept them to myself. I think every human being should do that. That the privileges of the nature of your experience must be in your hand. Because when you try to act in the world, there are many forces. All of them will not always cooperate. Sometimes they cooperate, many times they will not cooperate, many times they'll turn against you. This is the nature of the world, that's how it should be. World will never happen 100% your way, and I'm glad it is so, because if it all happened your way, where do I go? I'm glad it's not happening your way. Little bit my way, little bit your way, little bit somebody else's way. That's how the world should be.
The very meaning of life is to see how many skills you can acquire that have utility and then put those skills to use in the service of something bigger than yourself. But the only way that you're going to be able to do that is to build into the core of your being the ability to endure. Life is hard. Life is going to kick you in the face. There are going to be 1,000 times in your life when you're going to want to give up. And the only thing that is going to see you through, the only thing that's going to make sure that you actually fucking endure is your mindset. And if you get that right, if you lay the foundation for that, if you put all the pieces in place, then you're going to persevere. Then you're going to push through. Then you're going to be able to see things through to the end. But if you don't do that, then you're going to break. And that's what I see happen to so many people. And that's where my own life started, was not believing in myself. And that is one of the most important things for you to understand, is that your mindset is one of the most important feeders into your perspective, and perspective is everything. And the first most important decision that we all have to make, and this is one of my favorite Einstein quotes, is each and every one of us has to decide whether we live in a friendly or a hostile universe. And understanding that that is a choice, that's the critical part. And a lot of people don't see that as a choice. They believe that the universe is either working with them or it's working against them, and it's just a matter of fact. It isn't something that's open to interpretation. And what I want you guys to understand with the whole Mindset 101 course is one very simple thing. It is a decision. It's something that you have to decide. And whatever it is that you decide, you're going to end up seeing the evidence for that. So you have to be really careful whether you decide that life is difficult, it's this slew of things that's coming at you that's trying to break you and nothing ever good happens to you, or if you choose to believe no matter what happens to you, you can always choose your response. You can always choose to believe that it's happening for you and not to you. And in that perspective, in having that mindset, then you're going to begin to look for the solutions. You're going to look for the ways out. You're going to look for the lesson that you can learn in the hardship. That is mindset. It's a subset of beliefs about what you're capable of and what the world really is at its foundation, whether it's working for you or against you. So understand that these things are all a choice.
What is up, my friends? I am very excited to announce that Impact Theory's major Web3 project, codenamed the Avatar Project, is almost here. As most of you know, for the past year, we've been focused on building the future of this company in Web3. If you've already joined us as a Founder's Key holder, you know exactly what I'm talking about. We have so many different reveals for the project coming up, guys, including the real name, glimpses of the characters, the world, and more. So I invite you to join me in my Discord channel for more information and frequent competitions and challenges. When you click the link on the screen, you can accept that invite, and once you verify that you're not a robot, with or without any knowledge of Web3, you'll instantly be a part of the most empowering community I've ever put together, and we'll make sure to keep you up to date with upcoming news about Avatar. Get ready to level up. Click the link and join me in the Discord. Until then, be legendary. Take care. Peace.
You know you're here only because you can see, hear, smell, taste and touch. This is the only way you know that you're here right now. Suppose you doze off, don't, okay? Suppose you doze off, you don't know that you're here, isn't it?
Yes.
Even though you're here, your heart is beating, everything is functioning, the world is on, we are all here, but you won't know that you're here, nor will you know that I'm here or anybody else is here, isn't it?
Yes.
All that's happened is, life is on, full on, even within you. Only thing is, these 5 sensory organs have shut down. So your entire experience of life right now is happening because you can see, hear, smell, taste and touch. Just look at the nature of the sensory organs. In the very nature, they're outward bound, isn't it? Can you roll your eyeballs inward and scan yourself?
No.
Shall I give you a bad example?
Sure.
Our nose is located right above our mouth. Suppose you don't brush your teeth for 3 days. Though this nose is right here, it won't tell you you have not brushed your teeth. The whole room will know you have not brushed your teeth, but you will not know. This is the human predicament. It's very easy to see what's wrong with this guy, what's wrong with her, what's wrong with her. It takes a lot of observation to see what's wrong with this. That level of keenness of observation is missing in most people. They need to cultivate that.
I've discovered in my meditation that the way the brain works is it's continually telling us stories about the world, about ourselves, about the way people are. And I don't mean stories it's literally what I'm saying. It's like constructed like a story. It has a narrative arc to it, right? This is what happened to me, and the story is constructed, and this is the result. And what the story I'm telling myself might not be the correct story at all, right? So being able to understand what really happened, what is actually the story that occurred there, is extremely important. And so you're hitting on the bedrock, which is extremely fundamental, which is, do you believe that you're capable of change? Do you believe that good things happen when you go through a process of learning and taking steps? Do you believe, going back to your belief, that you can actually get out of your patterns? Because you can be fooling yourself, you can be bullshitting, you can be saying, yeah, I kind of do, but deep down inside you don't really want to do it because, believe it or not, your bad patterns give you a degree of comfort, right? It's something that you know, and to get out of them, you're suddenly thrust into the unknown, and that could be very frightening. So you could be holding on to these bad patterns. So the belief that I can change, I can actually do something different in my life, I can actually recreate myself, I can actually learn things, I can actually rewire my brain, because the brain is incredibly plastic. Even at the age of 40, 50, you can change your career, you can learn new skills. You know, I've reached 60, I'm constantly learning as well. The brain is insanely plastic. Do you believe that? Do you believe that you have the possibility to change yourself, to alter your patterns? That's probably the single most important thing right there. And to get people to believe that, as I said, there's 2 levels. There's the people who will shake their head, yeah, they'll read mastery, but it won't mean anything to them because they're afraid of the change. They're comfortable with a degree of failure, I hate to say, because if you don't try things, you never have to deal with the responsibility, the pain of failure, right? So you don't really want to change deep down inside. You don't really believe in Tom's number 1 bedrock belief, right? You're kind of fooling yourself. So it's not a fairy tale. It's not a bunch of a myth that we're creating. It's true that you have the power. The brain, if you just understood this one thing, that the brain is like a landscape. It's like a landscape out in the world that you see where things can be lush and tropical, or they can be completely arid and dead. You create that landscape yourself. You create the brain that you have by the degree of how you're open to experience, by the degree of how much you learn, by the degree of how many different sources of information you take in. You can create this incredibly alive brain that's very creative, imaginative, and how much more fun will your life be if you're open and you let things come in and new ideas come in. So it's up to you. You're the one that's creating your misery. It's creating your patterns. And it comes down to that bedrock 1 belief that you just mentioned.
Well, I think there's a through line of change as a thing that's a constant in our lives. There's change that we choose. We've become fed up with the status quo or normal, being okay with being okay. We decide that we're going to finally create the courageous first steps in making that change a thing that gets us closer to who we're meant to be, or the version of what becoming looks like for us. And then there's the change that chooses us, in that we think we have some control. That illusion is a thing that we can connect to until we wake up one day and there's a diagnosis, there's a job that no longer exists, a relationship that ends. And in a world where I had as the pillar, one of the biggest pillars of my identity, husband to Rachel, the change choosing me in this, the end of our marriage, was something that I now didn't know who I was in the absence of not being who I'd been. And in a world where we were also working together, that identity of what I did and what I thought I'd do for the rest of my life was something that in a single swoop was pulled out, and now required that I, in having been handed this blank piece of paper, go through the work of trying to fill out what next looked like. And I say in the book, and I've said it plenty of times, it's both parts exhilarating and terrifying. At the beginning, it's way more terrifying than it is exhilarating. But that's part of what courage ends up being a required ingredient for turning the terrifying into the exhilarating. Because when you realize, oh, there is no control, there's only the way that we respond to the circumstances that life presents, or the way that we, in choosing change, manufacture new events or a new road, a new map that we ultimately end up sailing off of. That still, because it ends up being different than something we've previously been familiar with or gotten the hang of or have comfort with, requires courage to step into it.
Well, it's kind of what the subject of, sort of what the Daily Laws is about. There's two things. So, the source of your power in life is your attitude towards the world. And in human nature, I kind of describe what I believe an attitude is. It's your lens, it's your way of looking at the world. Everybody's lens is different. You're not seeing things exactly as they are. You're seeing them filtered through how you look at them. Some people
This is so important.
Yeah. Some people are optimistic and adventurous. Some people are anxious and closed. And you could put two people in the same circumstances visiting the same place. The pessimistic, anxious person will find it unpleasant. People are rude. I don't like it. The adventurous, exploring type will find the circumstances very exciting. But it's the same thing. It's just you're judging it in a different way. So the lens that you want a lens that clarifies things. You want a lens that's realistic, that you're trying to see things as they are, right? It's good to be excited, but sometimes if you're too excited and too adventurous, you're going to walk right up to that tiger and they're going to eat you alive. Sometimes you have to be a little bit wary of things. You have to see your circumstances for what they are. In military terms, they call it situational awareness. You're very aware, crystal clear about who you are, about who other people are, about what the world is like. So that's the attitude that you want to craft for yourself in this world. And it's very difficult. As you've been saying very eloquently, the cards are stacked against you. Because of how we're wired. Our brains developed 200,000 years ago in circumstances that certainly aren't the way things are now. So there's kind of a gap there between how we're wired to think and what's going on in the 21st century. And B, we're dealing with technology that's making things harder. So your goal in life is to become more realistic, to be able to step back and look at things as they are. And how do you get there is the question. So first you have to see that as your goal, and it has to be important to you, and it has to be something that you want. And it's not just something that's cold and dry and scientific.
There's something, the book has a lot of analogies around the sea. I am not one that even likes the sea, which is hilarious. But
Cover of your book is the ocean. I love
the cover
it.
of the book is the ocean. I'm seasick thinking about it. But there's this interesting relationship that all of us have to familiarity, to comfort, to the status quo things we know, that has us in some ways deitizing or putting up on a pedestal the conceit that what has been will be, in a way that doesn't allow us to even consider leaving what we've known. And if The suggestion in the book is you can't actually make it to the other side of the ocean unless you lose sight of the shore, that other side of the ocean being the fulfillment of your fullest potential, or connecting to that idea of honoring the measure of your creation, right? You have been created for purpose, but that purpose requires that you get outside of your safe harbor, become unmoored, and ultimately enduring the choppy waters, believing though that you were built for those choppy waters, and then having the courage to continue sailing once you've now lost sight of what was familiar. And the idea of that safe harbor, even if it's connected to suffering, right? Like, we as people have in some ways convinced ourselves that we are willing to stay inside of suffering that we know rather than facing the possibility of something new, because the knowns of that existing suffering feel predictable. And life wasn't meant for suffering. I mean, like, it doesn't mean that you're not going to have to go through hard times or bad times, but you can decide to push away from it. The challenge in pushing away, though, is that safe harbor is surrounded on all sides by fear. And the only way to get to learning, the only way to get to growth, and my argument is that you have to be growing in order to feel a sense of fulfillment. If you're not growing, you're dying. And in that death state, you will not feel the things that you are hoping to feel when you're by yourself. But there's no drawbridge around the moat. There is a moat of fear. And so the courage piece just suggests that you are not going to eliminate fear just because you decide to be courageous. You're going to become prepared to face your fear, which is the thing that's necessary in that journey that has to go through it in order to become. So we have to face our fear, or we will stay stuck. We will stay inside of this familiar place, the comfort zone, the suffering we know, at the expense of who we could become.
Everybody wants a solution, but nobody wants to delve into the problem and see what is the nature of the problem that we have. The nature of the problem is like this. Why are we compulsive? What is it that's compulsive about us? Compulsion means we are going to the same place again and again. That means we are going in circles. The nature of physical existence in the universe is such, whether you take an atom, an individual atom, or the cosmic space, everything that's physical is always in cyclical movement. The atoms are doing their circles, the solar system is doing its stuff, the galaxies are doing their stuff, our own bodies are going through cycles. In fact, we are born because of the cycles in our mother's bodies. That's why we are born. So, entire physical nature is born out of cyclical movement. That means compulsiveness. So do not misunderstand compulsiveness as something bad, it's the basis of your existence. It is a good platform. But you're supposed to stand on the platform and act. Right now you have become the platform, so somebody else will dance on you.